Pilgrim?
Hi, I was thinking about asking you out, but then I realized how stupid that would be. So do you want to go out sometime?
No, that's okay. You just need to sign for this, alright? Yeah, it's how it works. You want me to hang out with you?
Yeah, if that's cool.
If I say yes, will you sign for your damn package? Do that again, and I will end you.
Back off, Haspian! If Gideon can't have you, no one can.
White North!
Alright, so here we are with the last installment of my Ramona Flowers miniseries, of sorts, with her hammer. I made this out of foam mat specifically. I picked up a pack of 4 from the dollar store, but I also used what I had on hand. I cut away the puzzle type pieces as I knew I would not be needing them, and I also started measuring the size I would actually need for the pieces of the hammer. I didn't follow specific dimensions of her actual hammer from the movie, although you could probably find those online somewhere. But I did adjust it to be fairly size accurate to my body, comparatively speaking to hers, as well as indicating on the bottom base piece and the top piece eventually where the middle is, which will come in handy later.
Oh, that's a little nasty.
For the front and the back pieces, as those are the biggest and a little too big for the dollar store foam pieces, and I wanted them to be a little bit thicker as they are the main scene piece, I used a thicker foam. Don't mind the marker lines. I got a little carried away and forgot it had to be a specific measurement. Anyways, I digress. As I had cut everything up to this point with scissors, I figured I could do that. Turns out I was wrong, so I started up with my utility knife. I got one side perfectly to my liking and then used paper so I could basically just mirror it without having to make an indentation in the foam.
Okay. Almost takes up the entire frame.
I then flipped that over, traced it, and cut it off of camera. Then did some not so basic math and cut out the rest of my pieces. Figured out which ones would go together, and ta-da! For the handle, I'm using a curtain rod, as it can be spray painted and it is adjustable. But to get the right size of hole for the top and bottom base, I'm using the rubber topper that actually comes with it, putting a heavy coat of black permanent marker on the lower rim and placing it down in the middle-ish, so I have an outline of where I need to cut. Then press the rod through the hole.
Not the top, that's the bottom.
and tape the rest of the pieces around that to be sure everything actually fit together as intended, and see how they fit together. As I hadn't done a 45-degree angle cut on all the edges, some would need to go on the outside and some specifically on the insides to fit properly. I hope that makes sense.
And there we go. After a couple minutes of fondling with it, that sounds weird, it works. Mostly. Got my PPE. Other PPE.
They wouldn't meet at an angle, essentially. One would always have to be over another, and one would always have to be under. To actually attach all these pieces, though, I'm going to be using a gel contact cement. I simply put a fair amount on each side that need to be placed together, waited about 10 minutes, and then pressed each side firmly together. I also added the tape back into place to really hold it and make sure it stayed together until it was fully dry.
This looks so bad right now, but trust the process.
At this point, I know the shape looks absolutely ridiculous, but trust the process. Once I had the outline done, I continued with the front, gluing the bottom first and working my way up. Waiting between each as to not disturb the last piece I placed down, I had to be a little bit creative with how I held the pieces apart while they actually dried.
Boom, boom, boom. Another one bites the dust.
But once I had one side completely down, I simply flipped it and started with the secret to this whole project. Spray foam. Insulation foam, if you will.
Oh my god.
This hammer was still not heavy, but it wasn't light. It's got some weight to it, but it's not nearly as heavy as it would have been if I added, let's say, clay to the inside or something. I needed something on the inside so it would mostly keep its shape, but also not add too much weight.
This is real time right now. Oh yeah, blah blah blah. Okay, I guess I'm gonna see how much that fluffs up.
I also added this in layers to be sure not to let it expand too much. Once I got it about halfway up, I hot glued the rod into place on the outside and the inside. Then continued with the foam around the rest. My initial thought was that if the spray foam expanded too much over the edge, I could always just cut it down, but that was never an issue. Instead, I added the back on the same way I did the front, except at the last second, I added slightly more spray foam to the inside to give it one last go, and then I sealed it all in. For the bottom piece though, I used a Timbits bucket lid, which came with their spooky Timbits bucket last year. I drilled a hole into it to make an approximate rod size hole. Sounds weird. That is a really weird sentence. And then placed it onto the rod for added structure. Now, as far as the actual framework goes, you could definitely stop here and just get to painting, but I went a step further to make my life more difficult, and that it did. Oh boy. I wanted to add a glow to this, as her glow obviously is done with CGI, but I wanted the cool effect anyways.
Okay, so seriously? The issue was the batteries. Okay, I'm turning them blue just in case this stops working, but...
I got some LEDs that were rechargeable battery operated. Well, they weren't actually, but the ones I got connected to a USB plug-in, which I rigged to connect to another power supply. The smallest one I could get my hands on, which was sadly still too big to fit into the bottom portion I had already glued into place, which was a process in itself. But again, I digress. I sanded down the bottom portion so that paint would apply easier later on. And added a little piece of tape onto literally each and every single LED light. There were so many. This was purely to prevent the soon-to-be paint job from getting onto any of them, allowing the light to come through as much as possible. And yes, these strips did have an adhesive on the back, but honestly I didn't trust it, and I was right not to. They were fairly janky. So I added the same contact cement from earlier onto the edges of my piece, and then onto the back of the light strip, and added them on. Which also added more math into this project, figuring out how to get every edge to light up between two strips without it looking too clumpy. If I was more into like pyrotechnics, I probably could have like cut pieces off and then put them back together, like soldered them or something, but I think it turned out alright. That voice crack.
Empty cans, and I'll be damned, your shit was never packed. And there's a way, and I'm damn sure you lost it. It is glowing.
In retrospect, I should have spent more on the LED strips and got better ones, as these were finicky and, like I said, a little janky, and they did not work the best at all times. But once everything was put on and dry, I added a primer onto the foam piece.
Alright, so round 2, it frickin' works. I'm just an idiot. Okay. Kind of getting the vibe that these little pieces of tape are gonna end up being like glitter. I'm just gonna find them everywhere for the rest of my life. Come on. How could this happen to me? I made my mistakes.
Once the primer was set, I added approximately 800 layers of silver acrylic paint with a disposable sponge. Fun fact, it's actually really hard to figure out where you've put silver paint, as it's incredibly reflective, obviously, once you've added the first layer. And the dry layer gives off the same appearance as the wet layer. So I just basically kept going, did a few layers on every side. Finally, I basically made a glory hole for the rod to go through. oh boy, so I could paint it brown with a metal specific paint. Though I did end up putting this on the plastic at the bottom, but that already had primer on it, so YOLO, or whatever the kids these days say.
Ah! Almost had it. I didn't think about me holding it. No, I just stay like this.
I also added the spray paint to the rubber pieces and then added Mod Podge over top to seal it into place because it was kind of a little bit sticky because again, this was meant for metal, not rubber. Okay, so due to the nature of what I'm doing, I do have a fan going, so bear with me, but I just want you guys to see this setup right now. It's got a plastic bag over here. For all the drips that may arise, and then it's literally on my camera. This one's gonna be a frickin' process. That's gotta fit in there. Probably won't. This is where the unnecessary hardship comes. I thought I would save you the hassle of experiencing what I actually had to go through, which was literal days of trying to figure out how to make this battery pack fit, realizing it truly would not, and then cutting off this beautiful bottom piece that I love, to eventually put on an uglier bottom piece that I didn't love, that did actually hold the battery pack in place, which I had to prime, and then paint, and then contact cement. And then paint again, all because the damn battery pack was too big. The things I did for these cool effects. Now, the only thing left to do was seal it all in, again with another spray paint clear coat. Then once everything was finally dry to the touch, I started the peel porn. I wish I was joking, but this truly was about 35 minutes worth of this. 35 minutes that I will never get back. But enjoy peel porn, guys.
I don't know how I did it, but I did it. Ooh. Don't know why that one looks different. Oh. Thick glue.
That's it for today's video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Happy Halloween.